do nothing. You'll do nothing, you little f***. Go and sit back down. Sit back down, you little ha.
F him. Everything he talks
Little mushroom.
The rivalry between Ilia Topuria and Paddy Pimblett, fueled by years of trash talk, cultural tension, hotel confrontations, and press conference chaos, finally boiled over in dramatic fashion on June 28, 2025, at UFC 317 inside T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, when the two fighters came face-to-face under the brightest lights in the sport. The night began with Topuria challenging Charles Oliveira for the vacant UFC lightweight championship, a fight that lasted just 2 minutes and 27 seconds, as Oliveira, a former lightweight champion with 35 career wins, came out aggressively, cutting Topuria early, drawing blood, and attempting to drag the fight to the ground before locking in a dangerous heel hook, only for Topuria to calmly escape, return to the feet, land a perfectly timed straight right hand that dropped Oliveira, and finish him with 2 follow-up punches to secure a first-round knockout, a victory that made Topuria a 2-division UFC champion after previously winning the featherweight title by knocking out Alexander Volkanovski at UFC 298 in February 2024 and defending it with another knockout against Max Holloway at UFC 308 in October 2024. As Topuria celebrated inside the Octagon with the lightweight belt around his waist, the moment took an unexpected turn when Paddy Pimblett emerged from the crowd and stepped into the cage, placing the two longtime rivals just feet apart in front of a live audience and pay-per-view cameras, where words were exchanged. Tempers flared, and Topuria shoved Pimblett backward before security rushed in to separate them, a brief but explosive confrontation that Pimblett later dismissed as weak while claiming it gave him confidence, yet symbolized the culmination of a feud that had been years in the making, stretching back to April 2021, escalating through a London hotel incident in March 2022, nearly turning physical again at the UFC 282 press conference in December 2022, and ultimately erupting on Fight Night in 2025. To understand why that shove carried so much weight, it's necessary to trace the rivalry back to its origin, when Pimblett had just signed with the UFC after a dominant run in Cage Warriors, where he captured titles at both featherweight and lightweight and quickly became a promotional asset thanks to his outspoken personality, thick Liverpool accent, and willingness to say anything, qualities that led Georgian lightweight Guram Kutateladze to call him out on Twitter for a potential UFC debut matchup, prompting Pimblett to respond with a controversial tweet mocking Georgians and referencing Russia, terrorizing their lives, a comment Pimblett later defended by claiming terrorize was Liverpool slang for bullying and insisting he had no knowledge of the 2008 Russo-Georgian War, portraying himself as a fighter engaging in trash talk rather than politics. But one man who took the comment personally was Ilia Topuria, who was born in Germany to Georgian parents who had fled ethnic cleansing in Abkhazia during the 1990s, returned to Georgia as a child, lived through the 2008 war at the age of 11 as Russian forces invaded, bombings occurred, and civilians died, and ultimately relocated to Spain at 15, making Pimblett's words feel less like banter and more like mockery of real suffering, prompting Topuria to issue a warning that they should never cross paths or he would take his head off, a warning that became reality in March 2022, when both fighters stayed at the same hotel ahead of UFC Fight Night 204 in London, where Topuria approached Pimblett in the lobby, reportedly while Pimblett was eating scrambled eggs, accompanied by members of his team, and what followed became one of the most talked about backstage incidents in recent UFC history as Pimblett attempted to de-escalate by extending his hand for a handshake, only for Topuria to slap it away and lunge forward, shouting insults in both English and Spanish, before the situation briefly turned physical and Pimblett grabbed a bottle of hand sanitizer from a nearby table and threw it at Topuria's head, an act that ended the confrontation but gave birth to the infamous nickname Hand Sanitizer Boy, a label Pimblett would use for years while Topuria's supporters mocked Pimblett for throwing a bottle instead of throwing a punch, cementing a rivalry that neither man was willing to let die and setting the stage for every confrontation that followed, all of which ultimately led to that tense, unforgettable moment inside the Octagon when two champions of trash talk, pride, and history finally stood face to face with nowhere left to run.
By the way, just so you understand how this all went down,
The altercation between Ilia Topuria and Paddy Pimblett lasted under 30 seconds, with entourages from both sides intervening, a table serving as a barrier, and security arriving before any punches landed or injuries occurred. Though the incident effectively destroyed any chance of reconciliation, both fighters immediately shared their sides on social media. Topuria posting on Instagram that the confrontation was a response to disrespect toward him and his country, claiming he would have taken Pimblett's head off if not for his team, while Pimblett tweeted mocking him, calling him a little clown after a hand sanitizer bottle bounced off Topuria's head, giving rise to the nickname Hand Sanitizer Boy that Pimblett would use for years, with Topuria's supporters retaliating by ridiculing Pimblett for failing to land a punch, and just 3 days later, both men competed at UFC London, Pimblett submitting Casula Vargas in the first round and Topuria knocking out G. Herbert in the second, without any UFC sanctions, proving the confrontation had succeeded in doing what both perhaps realized it would, making their eventual matchup a hot topic.
And I said to him, in my mind, you and Ilia met at the press conference or the backstage over there in England when the Mr. Hand Sanitizer, when that verbiage was born, is the day that you guys met.